Aloha, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. My name is Sprinklebeard, and today we are going to be reviewing one of my favorite aesthetic champions. Something I did not know that I was inclined to liking. Fish monsters. Meet the Swamp Spume Maker, Selkath, or as I'll be calling the rest of the video, Selkie. So, for any of those My Hero Academia fans, yes, that was a reference, and I know it's a terrible one, but I'm keeping it in there. Selkie here is a mage class, and he's very similar to your Voltus that you start off with, where his attack is designed to bounce from target to target. Now, one of the reasons that Selkie is going to either be low rated or people are not going to be excited for Selkie is that the animation, they do a good job because he's shooting bubbles, and the bubbles do very good damage. The problem is that they're bubbles, and they made them travel incredibly slow. And in this game, that speed matters a whole lot. I can't tell you how many attacks just drop from Selkath because his bubble is in mid-travel going after a dead enemy. And unlike Voltus, who fires lightning, who bounces even off the dead enemies, Selkath's bubbles often will hit dying enemies and then just not go anywhere. They won't do anything. So Selkie, unfortunately, as much as I love him design-wise and concept-wise, he unfortunately, because of his design, ends up failing more often than not. Now, with this being said, I do hope that eventually somebody from Watcher of Realms either sees this specific video or in their suggestion box, if I can figure out how to use it, that they can correct this so that Selkie becomes usable. Because the whole concept is his bubbles bounce. They're intended to bounce. It's one of those things, even if the target dies, his bubble should still bounce off of that location, or should at least pop in that location, because his bubbles do deal AoE damage. So let's get into that. So it creates an enchanted bubble to attack enemies and deals 100% damage. Deals an extra 30% damage to the last target. So enchanted bubble, after hitting the target, bounces to another enemy in range. Can bounce up to one time, but will not hit the same target multiple times. That is actually not true. It often does hit the same target multiple times. I don't know why they say that. Maybe it was supposed to say it can bounce up to one time, but will not bounce backwards. For that reason, they're correct. But no, it can definitely hit the same target multiple times. It absolutely does. So it's 100% damage, and it can scale up to 110%. Feels good. Each enchanted bubble gains increasing direct and blast damage over its duration, reaching a maximum of 50%. Direct damage and 30% blast damage. A maximum of 50% direct damage. So this direct damage can increase up to 60 and then up to 80 when skilled up. And then the blast damage increases up to 50% extra damage. Finally, his ultimate, triggering Savagery Ritual. So his ultimate is called Savagery Ritual. Increases his attack speed by 160, and then grants an attack speed increase to all allies in range, lasting for 10 seconds. His allies get an additional 30 attack speed. Now again, since certain champions get an awakening of 25 attack speed, giving 30 to everybody in range feels very good. Because we skipped over his stats, let's do that now. His stats, he's in a good place. A lot of our mages have around 3,500 because he's an epic champion. Some of the outliers go up higher to like 4,000, and then Freaks of Nature from the north apparently hit 5,000. But he has your standard range out of your mages, so nothing too immensely amazing there. His cost is 18. It's a little higher for the mages, but again, his damage is there, so I don't mind the extra cost for him. I will say, though, his attack interval is incredibly slow at 3. This does boast a big problem for him based upon what I said earlier, is that his attacks often miss the targets that he's firing at, because his attack speed is too slow, or his bubble travel time is too slow. So with those features in place, understand that currently the way things are kind of stacked against Selkath in a way. With that, now that we know what his skills are, let's go ahead and look at his awakenings. So his passive is called Gift from the Deep. His ultimate is Savage Ritual. So when Savagery Ritual is active, inflicts Immobilize on the target when Enchanted Bubble hits. Little girl, do I have water up here? I don't. You're going to have to wait a minute. So during his ultimate, he can immobilize the target that he's aiming after. I would assume it's only the first target. I do have him, and I do have him awakened to 3. So unfortunately, we're going to have to test this out here in a second. His attack increases plus 200. Very useful thing. When attacking, the caster has a 25% chance to fire an additional Enchanted Bubble with 50% power. This is still good, and this kind of turns him into an AoE champion, which feels absolutely amazing. Hey, Psycho, welcome back, brother. His Awakening 4, all damage plus 5%. All damage is a very specific thing, right? It's not just like his attack gets increased by 5%. It's all damage, which I'm not sure if you want the extra attack. That way your base damage, like when you go into combat, is higher, and then you're hitting things for more damage, or if it's better for after the fact. That is still to be seen. I would say all damage is a bit better, because this means even his explosions are doing more damage. I guess that would still be true for attack as well. Finally, his level 5 is the Enchanted Bubble can bounce one more time, and even back to the attacked targets. So this is what allows his bubble to ricochet backwards, which makes that statement about his Enchanted Bubble not make a whole lot of sense. It seems like they meant to say that it can bounce to the same target, and maybe somebody added in the word not, or maybe somebody misunderstood, or maybe in programming they designed it to not bounce to the same target, but it currently does. So we'll have to show off his skill set here in just a moment. And yeah, I love Selkath. I think he's hilarious. I think he looks cool. I'm very sad that he's not super amazing, because when I got him, I was like, whoa, this dude looks badass as fuck. This is gonna be great. So let's get into using him. Where is Selkie going to be best used at? So Selkie is a mage. Anywhere that you need a mage, you need AoE, and you need him to do decent damage, he is going to be there for you. Specifically, if we look at Voltus's stats, right? He, in essence, is kind of a better version than Voltus, because Voltus has this 2600, so he's got about 1000 attack over top of Voltus. However, Voltus does have the faster attack speed and drops less attacks. Again, the animation of the lightning going and hitting the dying target and still bouncing onward does give Voltus an advantage over Selkath. However, I do believe Selkath is the better version of the two. Also, Savage Ritual, increasing everybody's attack speed, makes him a little bit more of a better utility champion. Voltus will end up hitting more enemies, hitting up to 5 enemies, but I would argue that Selkath is going to kill them faster. So it's kind of take which one that you think you need. Obviously, you can be using both, especially in Gear Raid 1. You're probably going to be using both if you get Selkath earlier on. But Selkath is a very interesting champion in that regard. He's kind of a higher damage version of Voltus, but he also has a giant weakness currently in his kit, and I hope that they just patch it. I hope they can fix the bubble so that it operates the way that it seems like it's intended to do. So in the arena, Selkath can be good at things like the AoE. Because of his slow attack speed, I don't think this is the best place for him. He's a lot better in certain things like the sustained DPS, and again, because of that slow attack speed, I kind of feel like the best places for Selkath in the arena, he's not great at because his attack speed is so slow. If you end up getting a whole bunch of gear that does increase his attack speed, again, as a mage, we still want attack percentage, crit rate, and crit damage as our main stats. But Selkath will greatly benefit from attack speed after the fact. So it's one of those things, he will benefit more from attack speed. Again, if he's one of your first epics as well, he is going to be an advantage on your account. You want to take every advantage you can into the arena with you. In the campaign, he's brilliant. He's absolutely phenomenal in the campaign. Even in the Void Rift, there's a lot of levels where the enemies are either kind of slow moving or they don't swarm you heavily. And Selkath, even though he's like an AoE mage, he's not necessarily amazing at AoE clearing. He's good at clearing a few enemies off at a time, if that makes sense. With that being said, in the campaign in the Void Rift, I've had very good use of using him. So that's why he's 5-star on this account, is that I was planning to take him up to 6-star to be a little bit more reliable than champions like Osiren. Because Osiren's damage, I was just getting more and more turned off of. So in our raids, in the promotion raids, he's actually kind of good everywhere. It's kind of weird in that way. So in the marksman, it's not the best place for him, but because of the utility of his ultimate increasing the attack speed of everybody in range, you can benefit the marksman, and his bubbles hitting things multiple times does mean that he deals more damage on average than a lot of other mages will. Now, some of your single target mages will be better in the marksman area, but it's interesting that he's actually pretty decent in the marksman one. In the mages, this is the one where he shines the most. He's going to do a lot of damage. He will kill the big shielded enemies. So let's go ahead. We'll jump into one right away. Let's make sure I have him in my party, since I have the notorious problem of doing these videos and not bringing the champion I'm reviewing. In this video, I'm not switching Selkath's gear around, so we're going to be looking at the Selkath that I have currently geared up, which is in mostly yellow gear. He is not wearing the most impressive gear at the moment. So as you see, we have a very slow travel time on his bubble, but as you can also see, it is... I didn't bring... This is going to go poorly. I did not bring Comet to handle the top because I've been goofing around too much. Novris, can you handle the top? I should have maybe put him up top, to be honest. Selkath is very good at clearing off these small minions very reliably. My mouse, I hate it. Alright, Osiren has no gear on him, but apparently he's doing enough damage here. I like it. Anyways, focus on Selkath. As you can see, he's doing enough here. With his 3-star awakening, he's constantly firing that extra bubble out, and that extra bubble is just an extra 50% damage. It's absolutely fantastic in every sense of the word. Sorry guys, I don't like the sounds of me failing, so we're gonna start putting a bunch of champions up top. So Savagery Ritual. So next thing that gets summoned, we will show off Savagery Ritual. Savagery Ritual does have a little bit of an animation to it. He has to do this little dance first. But then, as you can see, he becomes a small Gatling gun of damage for that short duration. Now, it is unfortunately very short. I do have Selkath fully skilled up because he is a champion that I have liked and I've been wanting to use more of. I just haven't been able to justify it completely yet. It's not that he's bad, it's just that very often when using him, when he was just doing enough damage to kill off enemies, like when this was more of a struggle for him to kill off these enemies, there was too many times where he would drop the damage because he would like kill the first unit and then throw an extra bubble at it, and that second bubble would miss the fallen unit, and then because it didn't bounce to anything. But here you can see the extra 30% on the second hit of the bubble is doing plenty. He can hold a lane by himself. And again, this is in yellow gear. This is not him being in the best gear. Or in this series, a lot of times I'm taking Comet's gear and putting it on champions to make them look good. I want players to feel like if I choose this champion to make great on my account, that champion will feel great on their account. In endurance, he's very good. Even against the faster dog-like things, his bubble can often travel and then like kill one and then bounce to the next dog, killing the next dog. In melee, as long as you have a platform, I would say you can use him and he will do just fine. I will say though, he probably does need a champion of melee support. He's not going to be like some of our other champions like Osiren that was able to just like clear everything by himself. Yes, it does depend on the gear though, because Osiren would have the same problem. Osiren would still want defenders blocking the path so that his damage can go off as much as possible. Guild Boss. You can absolutely use him in Guild Boss, and what makes Selkath really good is if you put him directly, like, the stage of Dragon is set that there's a left wing, a right wing, and a center. If we put him on those center podiums facing towards the dragon, this means he could increase the attack speed of all your fighters whenever he uses Savage Ritual, and because the way his bubble does hit the same target multiple times, I don't understand why they say it doesn't, but when it does, he can do very respectable damage to Dragon. I wouldn't say he is best in Dragon, but that utility is very noticeable, and having that attack speed increase whenever the Dragon starts his giant inhalation is going to be a very big advantage for your team. Artifact Material Raid, I would say he's okay. It's one of those things, you have limited platforms, so usually your single target damage dealers are going to be better up on those platforms. Yes, you could argue that his bubbles can travel and like maybe peck off multiple of the minions, or hit Salazar and then go hit a minion before it collides with him. However, if your Selkath is one-shotting those minions, you would be better off just killing Salazar anyways, right? So it's one of those arguments. I don't think that this would be the best place for him. Again, there is the utility of him increasing the attack speed, which is very useful. In Tide, I don't know if I like him in Tide or not. Again, we have the issue that when he fires a bubble, if the target dies, his bubble just disappears. It just doesn't connect with anything. With that problem, I have Comet on my team. Comet usually wipes off waves off the face of the earth by himself. When he does this, Selkath's bubbles tend to miss. However, if you don't have another AoE mage clearing off the entire board for you, Selkath's bubbles could probably go down, and if he's your best geared champion, the way that I was really excited to have him on my account, I was going to have him be a very well geared up champion. The problem was that Comet just always cleared everything, so Selkath always looked bad in comparison to a legendary. But if you don't have Comet, yes, those bubbles could be bouncing around, killing off a lot of the swarms. So I think he does have a place in Tide. I would say, though, it is conditional, making sure that those bubbles are hitting enemies. And if you feel like they're not hitting enemies, or if you're wondering why you're not completing certain content, I would argue it is probably Selkath's dropped bubbles that are killing you. Resource Raid. This is another really good place for Selkath. So again, as you're starting up through the game and you haven't gotten all of your legendaries, or you haven't figured out what everybody does yet, he is an AoE champion, and his AoE damage here is quite respectable.
Your queen has arrived.
Their lungs shall bubble and burst.
So there's that dropped damage that I was talking about. That can be extraordinarily frustrating, and it's one of the reasons I think that Selkath needs attack speed kind of more than anybody else, is that a lot of the times his bubbles, them dropping damage, so there he dropped damage, it's a very unfortunate thing. And again, I hope Watcher of Realms, if you watch this, or if somebody does it before I figure out how their suggestion box works, But also, as you can see, as the bubble gets farther away from him, it gets bigger and bigger. That's part of that passive doing the extra damage. I will say his ult doesn't last as long as I want it to, which is a very unfortunate thing. But yeah, Selkath I think is hilarious. I think he's adorable. I like the concept of him a whole lot, and I have no problem getting him awoken even more. Like when I get extra copies of him, I'm pretty pumped because I like his design aspect. It's just that bubble dropping. There are times that bubble drop is going to hurt you enough that I do think Selkath might be that reason. You might pump the brakes on fully upgrading the champion right away because of that. Gear raids. In the gear raids, Gear Raid 3, again, not the best place for him. However, because his bubble can attack the same target multiple times and it bounces to other targets, he does have a bit of usefulness there where he's not going to feel terrible in Gear Raid 3. And Gear Raid 1 is definitely where he can shine. I was using him quite extensively. It was funny, I actually took Osiren up to 6-star, and then Osiren pushed me to the next gear level, and then when I started getting better gear, I started giving it to Selkath at level 5 instead. So I used Selkath and Comet for a long time in my Gear Raid 1, and in all honesty, the two of them were very often enough of the damage I needed to clear out things. Now again, Comet was doing majority of that work, but Selkath being able to hit some of those same targets, or if Selkath hit a target and everything else died around him, that bubble bouncing to the same target and just exploding again was meaningful damage. It was nice. And then again, that increased attack speed, hitting Comet, hitting my healer, often felt very good as well. So the utility along with the damage feels very good. Which I will say is maybe one of the issues with Selkath as well, is that he's almost like a support mage and not a true mage in that sense. In Gear Raid 2, he'll do just fine. A lot of the times you're only dealing with 1 to 2 enemies, so this is where he can kind of shine some of the highest as well. Definitely a damage dealer that you could consider, and then giving that attack speed, if it's to your tanks or if you're using fighters the way that I do to get through this content, giving that attack speed to fighters is going to feel amazing. Faction trials. In the basic trial, there is a reward for summoning 3 mages on majority of the levels. So for that reason, him being a mage and his damage being decent and his bubbles bouncing to the same target, this is actually a great place for him. He does a lot of work in this area. Even when you get to the esoteric, trial of the esoterics, you fight these very big, heavily armored, slow-moving enemies. Selkath actually does do decent damage to them. Now, there are better mages, and you want to have a slow effect to slow down the golems even more, because their HP pools are massive. They're massive HP and defense tanks, so your mages will do the most damage. However, I haven't gotten Selkath to a point where he is killing them off by himself. If anybody should remind me in a day and 12 hours, actually this video will probably be posted on that day. If I remember, I'll put Selkath in my best gear and see if he can take down some of the golems. I am pushing harder content on that, so I do need my Comet in that gear. So unfortunately, they're both esoterics, so Selkath is always going to be a distant second compared to Comet on my account. Ladies and gentlemen, that is our review of Selkie. He is a personal favorite champion of mine, even with his defects. I think he's hilarious. I think he's interesting. He's always talking about bubbles, and that, I don't know why, makes me happy that this horrifically ugly fish monster is obsessed with his bubbles and firing them at enemies. He absolutely does do his damage. Like, he's not a slouch when it comes to damage. I will say, though, again, that dropped damage chance that he has It's something you need to be aware of for the champion, and it potentially will turn. I know a bunch of players are going to be like, drop damage, I'm out. Yeah, he's not going to be like the top tier mage for sure, but he's also an epic, right? We don't count on our epics to carry the game nearly as hard as we do our legendaries, and often a legendary mage is going to outclass all the epics anyways. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching. If you like this video, make sure to hit the like or subscribe button down below. It really helps me a lot. And the attention I get makes me feel good. It makes me want to make more of these videos. If you want to join us over at twitch.tv/sprinklebeard, try to stream every day, Sunday through Wednesday. That is if I am not working overtime, because I work 12-hour shifts overnight. Last but not least, thank you very much for watching. And of course, until that next time, ta-ta.